People come from all walks of life. They all have lives they lead. Any and all are welcome here to come and chat with me.
Hi, everyone. I met today's guest in person just a couple of days ago, and that was kind of a treat. Almost as good as getting a chocolate bar or a Buster bar. Hey, I only do Buster bars in the heat. Anyway, let's see. What do I know about him? He is a parent. He's worked in the prison for a number of years as an assistant warden, I believe, and he's on a number of boards. And these are some of the topics that we're going to explore. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest, Peter Lang. Hi, Peter.
Hey, Nancy, how's it going?
Good, good. Thanks for doing this, by the way.
Oh, thanks for having me. I've been a big fan of your show since it started. I've always been watching it. I'm probably 20% of your views.
Oh, all right. Well, I'd love to have fans. I don't know what's happened. Like all of a sudden it's kind of exploded and I'm getting more and more people wanting to be on the show, which I love, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, wait a minute, why now? Like I'm 73 years old. Why is it happening now? But whatever. But anyway, back to you. Okay, so now I know, as I said at the top, you're an assistant warden. And where's that?
I'm at a place called Pacific Institution in the Regional Treatment Center. So that's at the Matsqui complex. So, but I've been pretty much everywhere. Mountain Institution, Queequeg Healing Village. I was the deputy there for 6 years.
Okay.
And I've moved around. I've got 20 years. I just hit my 20th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
So what is it about the job that you like?
Well, I started as a correctional officer and then a parole officer in the community and in the institution. And I love doing those jobs. Those are great jobs. I'm not a huge fan of being a manager. It's okay, but I really like working with inmates. And as you move up, you have less and less contact with inmates and more contact with staff and staffing issues and things like that. So I loved the job when I was working directly with inmates, and that's the part of the job I still love. I don't like all the politics and the bureaucratic junk that goes with it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I know, as I mentioned, also you're on a number of boards. Let's start with the first one from your bio, and thanks for sending that, by the way. Fraser Valley Child Development Center. Yeah,
so the Fraser Valley Child Development Center operates out of Abbotsford, Chilliwack, and Mission. We service those areas, including Hope, right up to Boston Bar. Child Development Center, if you don't know, offers a number of programs aimed at children and youth with developmental difficulties. So like autism, things like that. But there's a range of programs, speech therapy. We're doing stuff with Seabird Island right now. So I've been on the board about a year and a little more than a year. It was pre-COVID, probably 2 years now. And then, but the bulk of our meetings are just like this on Zoom.
Yeah. Thank goodness for Zoom. And you're also with Restorative Justice.
Just started with them. I've had 2 meetings. I watched your last show with Jared, and he's on the board with us. And I think he's been around a little bit longer than me on the board, but I'm pretty new on that board and got to sit in on one of their I'm not sure what they call them, the sessions that they have with people that are being diverted. And that was really interesting too.
Yeah, my sister used to volunteer with them for years. One of my sisters. And now what else is a public safety advisory committee? So what do you do? And that's for the city of Chilliwack, right?
Yeah, so that's one of those city committees that I applied for after the last election. It was something that interested in me because of my background in corrections, also with an education in criminology and liberal studies. So I wanted to give back, right, to the community. So I sit on that committee as a community member, not as a corrections employee or representing the Correctional Service Canada in any way, shape, or form, but more as a citizen and as a downtown person, because I live downtown as well. So I like to sort of focus on what are the safety needs of the downtown area. And things are improving. I see lots of improvement happening in town. I'd like to see more lighting though.
Would you? Yeah.
It's getting better.
Yeah, I like the new crosswalk flashing lights.
Me too.
Yeah, I think that's really great, because there's like, as you're probably aware, there's a lot of seniors around here, a lot of us walking with canes or these little walkers, and we're slow. Sometimes we're slow. So if you have those nice lights flashing, it really, really makes a difference because they last quite a while. They stay on quite a while.
Yeah.
Now, and also you're involved with the Chilliwack Métis. Are you Métis, by the way?
Yeah, I'm Metis. Yeah, I just took over as president from Louis probably about 5 or 6 months ago because he got elected as our regional rep for the Métis Nation of BC.
Mm-hmm.
So we're a chartered community within the Métis Nation of BC. Chilliwack's not our home territory by any means. Like the homeland, the Métis homeland is really Winnipeg and the prairies. So BC is not really our homeland, but most of us have kind of migrated out this way. So my grandmother came out here from the prairies. She was born in Winnipeg, and her mom was Cree and Métis. So I'm actually some Cree as well. And yeah, I just joined Chilliwack Métis when we moved to Chilliwack a number of years ago, and got on the board as the vice president. Then Louis got elected, so by default I became the president, which, you know, I wasn't seeking it out, but it, you know, we need leadership, and I'm hoping in the next election somebody else will step in and maybe take over as president, and I'll go back to my vice president role in a supportive capacity. I like doing things like that. I don't necessarily have to be in the spotlight.
Right.
So
Yeah, I know that for the Métis, like they didn't have status, right?
right, we have
Has that-
citizenship.
Yeah. Oh, has that changed at all?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a long story, but we're not under the Indian Act, right? The racist Indian Act that the government imposed. So they're the ones who decided who's going to be First Nations and not First Nations, and that's why you have a status card. That's the government of Canada saying you're First Nations, you're not, and here's your card, kind of thing. So you'll hear people say Aboriginal non-status, which means maybe they lost status at some point because they married outside or something to that effect. But in Métis was different. Like we were given scripts, we weren't put on reserves like First Nations. We were given land scripts, which were like a coupon, and the government would say, okay, here's your land. And then the government turned around and ripped us off of that land. So
Big surprise there, right?
yeah, so we were considered the road people. Sometimes in the old days, people would refer to us as half-breeds. That's how we were reflected on the census. We do have many Métis that went to residential school. You don't hear about it as much because a lot of times it depended on your skin color. So if you were a half-breed who happened to be more pale like me, you might have got away with not going to residential school. But if you looked First Nations, like many of our Métis people do, they probably did get sent to residential school or could have. So there is a quite a lengthy history of residential school with Métis as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting and sad and, you know, very disturbing, very disturbing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially, you know, what's come to light just recently. You know, I was saying to one of my friends, I put it on Facebook anyway, that, you know, some of us, we had heard some stories as non-Indigenous people, and we ignored them. I think that's what happened. We were listening to the government rather than listening to the voices of the people, you know, that were being abused. And it's a sad thing, you know, it really is.
Yeah, I didn't hear about it in school growing up in the 70s, but I heard about it from First Nations friends. And there were residential schools right up until 1996 in BC. I think the last one to close was, I think it was Lytton. Yeah, and it was 96, I know that. And right. But we didn't learn about it in school. And likewise with the Métis, like Louis Riel was portrayed in our Canadian history books as a traitor.
Right.
Like, you know, and that wasn't the case for us. He, you know, he was our leader, right? So
yeah, different, totally different slant.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we are so uneducated, and I'm talking about, you know, white people, not, you know, we really are uneducated and refuse. Some people just, you know, I hear all the stories and it makes me so sad. Like, you're a bunch of drunks, you know, the chief lives in grand housing while the rest of you live in poverty. Like all of these stupid things that people say. And it's just insanity, you know, as far as I'm concerned. Anyway.
Yeah, there's a really good short little video about 2 minutes long by Wab Canoe that you can see on YouTube called 5 Things You Got to Stop Saying About My People. And they talk about a lot of those tropes, those racist tropes about First Nations people and stuff. It's a great little video. It was from the George Stroumboulopoulos show back in the day when it was still on.
Oh, okay.
Get a chance, look it up.
Yeah, I will for sure. Thank you. Now, one of the things we're going to last board that we're going to talk about is the Chilliwack Citizens for Change.
Oh yeah, that's these guys. Yeah, take action. CCFC.
All right. So, what is your mandate?
we want to change Chilliwack for the better. We're just a group of individuals that got together after the last civic election. We kind of met through the election. I was fairly new in town. I ran for school trustee. Didn't get in. Jared beat me by about 400 or 500 votes. And like, I always thank him every time I see him, because I was like, after watching what's going on there, I'm like, I'm sure glad that's not me there, because I'd have a hard time keeping my mouth shut sometimes.
Yeah.
But I met these really cool progressive people. We started banding together and saying, listen, if we want to change this town, we got to all work together. So we created Chilliwack Citizens for Change. We have Facebook groups. We have side committees that are focused on things like climate change, youth, what else? Homelessness, food security, which Jared mentioned when he was on your show.
Yeah.
And he mentioned Chris, who's very active on the food security side of things. And so I'm not as active as some of the other members because I work in Abbotsford every day, Monday to Friday. But I try to help out wherever I can. And as we're coming out of COVID, you'll start seeing more and more of us around town. Like, we're connected to the farmers market that's starting tomorrow on Sunday, June 6th. And all of these little things are things that we're involved in. We're involved in the Chilliwack Healthier Communities and things like that. And we're trying to sway elections too. We're a voting bloc, and the local politicians, especially the city councilors, if they're not on board with us, they're probably not going to get reelected.
Okay.
Because we're a voting bloc, and we will be doing endorsements
Yeah.
and non-endorsements in the next civic election. We don't get involved too much provincially or federally because we all come from different backgrounds, NDP, Green, whatnot, Liberal. But civically, we will be involved in the school board election as well as the city election. So, yeah.
Very good. Now we're going to touch on a personal sad story for you, right? And that's about one of your sons, your son Nick. Okay, you want to talk about Nick?
Yeah, Nick, his story is pretty well known. It was investigated by the representative for children and youth after he passed away in 2015. It's actually 6 years on June 9th that he passed away. He's kind of what spurred me to start being active and vocal in the community, and provincially and even federally, like within my work. I used to just sort of sit back and I had opinions about things and whatnot, but I didn't get super involved in community stuff. I just kind of was plugging away at my job, thinking my kids will grow up and, live happily ever after. I'll retire and collect my pension and move on. But life threw a curveball at us, and Nick got involved with drugs. He ended up getting a charge for assault because he pled guilty to that charge because we were told the only way you could get help in this province for youth with addictions was to plead guilty to the crime, and then they would make substance abuse treatment as part of your probation conditions. Otherwise, there was no way to get access to help for him. We had been looking for help for months. From January 2015 right up until the day he died, we were trying to find different places he could go to get help. He had one appointment with a substance abuse counselor, and from the PCRS, I think it's called, down on Young there. And his appointments were like 2 months apart kind of thing, right? Like, so you couldn't get in to see the counselor on a regular basis. And when you're in active addiction, you need to be detox, second treatment, and it has to be there when you need it. Right. You have to strike when the iron's hot. So I made it my mission after he passed away. It was actually Alex Gervais' death that was the one that sort of pushed me over the edge, because he was Metis as well, just like Nick. And he jumped out of a hotel room window in Abbotsford about 2 months after Nick had passed away. And when I saw that one happen, I thought, this is going to keep happening unless someone actually speaks up. So I started speaking up, and we sued the province back when the Liberals were in power. And one thing led to another, and the NDP got elected. And the NDP were different when they got elected. They actually reached out and talked to us. Katrina Conroy was the minister at the time, and she invited us to meet with her, and I got to talk to the Select Standing Committee on Children and Youth and let them know what I felt sort of the top 10 things were that needed to change in this province for youth, particularly in terms of addiction and trauma treatment. So the NDP listened, they started making changes. They're not perfect. I wish they would do more. I wish there were more beds, but we do have a youth treatment center that's either just opening or about to open. That's right behind the Travel Lodge. Those kind of facilities, the Chilliwack Youth Health Center, another cause I'm involved in. Those kind of facilities weren't around when Nick had his struggles, and I believe he'd be alive today if those resources were around. So it's a sad story, but it's I'm at the point now in that journey of grief where I kind of celebrate the 15 years I had with him.
Yeah.
And I cherish that, and I sort of try to honor his memory by trying to make positive change in the province for youth.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, it's hard to pick up from that one. It really is, you know. Yeah, and also we're going to just change it because that's a heavy topic. It really is.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah.
Yeah. You have a Canadian human rights complaint in progress against your employer?
Yeah, so that complaint is in progress. It's being investigated by the Canadian Human Rights Commission. And essentially what that boils down to is it's about, well, Indigenous people are overrepresented in our federal prison system. A lot of it's to do with the residential school effects and the 60s scoop effects. These are the residual effects is we end up overrepresented in the federal prison system. But my complaint is more focused around the Correctional Service in Canada and how they decide who's Indigenous and not Indigenous when it comes to staffing. And with staffing, we have a lot of people that are basically ticking the box and saying they're Indigenous when they spit in a cup and send it off to 23andMe, and they have come back and they claim to have a little bit of Indigenous ancestry. So they tick the box off and say, I'm Indigenous, when in fact they're not. They're not Metis, they're not First Nations, they're not Inuit, right? They don't have a nation that they belong to. And that's the key. And I said to the government, you can't just promote people that say they're Indigenous. You need to ask the question, who's your nation and does your nation claim you? And that's the key. So Métis Nation claims me as a citizen and I claim them, right? Yeah. So there's that mutual relationship. Likewise with First Nations, most First Nations people are happy to tell you who their nation are. I met a First Nations man at Townsend Park the other day. He saw a shirt I was wearing about smudging, and he said, oh, I like your shirt. Where's it from? And I told him, and then he said, oh, I'm so-and-so, and I'm from Suwali, but I married into Kwantlen, right? So First Nations people and Métis people, we tend to be very proud of our connection to our nations, right? We're proud of our histories, and within the federal government, they don't care about that. And I'm saying to them, you need to care about it, because when you're promoting people to higher levels that are making decisions over our people that are incarcerated, they better know what they're talking about, and they better be looking through a non-colonial lens when they're making decisions. They need an Indigenous lens when you're making decisions. Right. So that's the crux of my complaint.
Okay, well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
Now, on that note, we're just about out of time. So just stay there while I say goodbye to the audience, okay?
Okay.
Okay, everybody, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something from listening to Peter Lang. I certainly did, things I didn't know, wasn't aware of. And I hope you keep watching the show and stay safe and all those things. And peace out, everyone. Until next time.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see.